And overseas now, and one of the big events of the past few days has been the Shirt Sleeves Informal Summit, as it was dubbed, between the leaders of the world's two superpowers, the United States and China. China's new president, Xi Jinping, who will be in power for the next decade, travelled to a ranch in California to meet with President Barack Obama for 2 days of high-level talks. So what is the import of it all and what was achieved? President Xi, travelling with his very glamorous opera singer wife, seemed determined to present a new look, more modern Chinese leadership. However, the trip coincided with a dark chapter in China's recent history, a commemoration in Hong Kong, where crowds gathered for the anniversary of the brutal Tiananmen Square massacre 24 years ago. Hong Kong was the only place in China where such a large commemoration was allowed. Well, joining me now to discuss this summit is David Smith, lecturer in American politics and foreign policy at the US Studies Centre at the University of Sydney. Welcome, David. Now, David, the summit held in California between these superpower leaders. Before we talk outcomes, how crucial is it that they actually got together to talk through issues?
Well, this was pretty important symbolically, and I think that really the only things that will come out of this talk are symbolic, the fact that they were talking to each other. For Obama, this was important because his first meetings with the predecessor, Hu Jintao, were derailed by the issue of Chinese territorial claims in the Taiwan Straits. Now, the reason why China believed that these derailed the early talks was that they felt that the United States was not respecting China's ambitions and China's rights as a rising superpower in the region. And, you know, Hu Jintao's successor has come away from this meeting saying that the United States and China are forging a new type of relationship between great powers. In other words, he believes that what both of them have got out of this meeting is that Obama is actually giving China the respect that it deserves now as a rising power, and this is perhaps in a position to put both of them on an equal footing as superpowers.
All right, well, David, what should we read into the fact that the Chinese, and, you know, obviously the very senior leadership came at all, and it was not to the formal capital, Washington, and that they agreed to attend what was billed as informal Shirt Sleeves Summit?
The informality of it was trying to create the impression that there'd really been a thaw in relations because things were so cold between Obama and Hu Jintao. Now, it didn't quite work out that way, I think, because the Chinese delegation actually refused to stay at the same complex, the Sunnylands Ranch, where Obama was staying because they thought it might be bugged by the Americans. So that's not very good for creating a relaxed, informal atmosphere. And despite the fact that they were wearing shirt sleeves, both leaders were also surrounded at all times by a phalanx of about 6 interpreters and officials. So it wasn't some kind of easygoing conversation. It was never going to be, given that neither leader is fluent in the other leader's country. Yeah. And from all accounts, it was a fairly kind of stilted conversation. So the informality of this is the impression that they want to create, but they really didn't succeed in attaining anything like actual informality.
The outcomes, what was actually achieved? Now, on the cyber spying and the cyber theft that US and indeed Australia accuses China of, what actually happened there?
Very little, because China responded by saying, we recognise your concerns, we're victims of these kinds of attacks as well. And in the past, certainly China has been quite keen to remind the US that it's been revealed that the US has quite an active cyber attack program ready to go against Iran in the event that it needs to be used. So China certainly would have come away with from this knowing that Obama considers it a serious issue, and perhaps even the #1 issue as it's being talked about in American national security. But China certainly wasn't really giving away any concessions on this issue. They weren't agreeing to take concrete steps to actually reduce the number of cyber attacks that are hitting American business that the United States claims are costing American businesses $250 billion a year. So Obama has managed to show that it's a major concern, the fact that it was raised at this summit, but not very much concrete has been achieved.
David, the media made much of it, but will the Chinese have taken great offence from the no-show, effectively, by Michelle Obama, particularly as the Chinese First Lady is making a big splash? She and the President were showing a new look, more modern Chinese leadership.
I'm not sure exactly how much this is going to matter. I mean, this is one of these things that made news for a few hours, a few days ago, and has fairly quickly disappeared. So I don't think this is going to be a huge problem.
Turning to another issue that's obviously been big in the last several days, the revelations about this PRISM surveillance system that some huge internet companies are playing ball effectively with Big Brother, with American spy agencies. The revelations really that seemed to be the most shocking, I guess, was that Big Brother has listed phone numbers. They've got the phone records of ordinary Americans. They're not recording the phone calls exactly, but they know every number that Americans are making. And today the whistleblower outed himself. What does this all mean?
Well, the interesting thing about this is that it actually appears to be all within the bounds of legality, and in fact this is basically a continuation of a program that has been in place since about 2007 or 2008, and Americans don't seem to be reacting very strongly to this news at all. Despite how disturbing it seems to be, the fact that the United States government has all of these phone records and has them going back for a few years, so for people who fall under the suspicion in this dragnet, they could potentially be investigated retrospectively. Perhaps the more disturbing thing about PRISM is it's not the phone records, it's the fact that the United States government appears to have access to the servers of major high-tech companies in the US, like Google and Facebook, both of which have adamantly denied that the United States government has any kind of direct access to data. But we have to remember, as the Wall Street Journal detailed today, that the term direct access has a very technical meaning in IT, which the companies can legitimately say, oh, the United States government has no direct access, referring to the sort of highest level of access that's available. But the US government may well have access to significant amounts of data, and they've said that they're not reading Americans' emails, but the ambit that PRISM has is to investigate communications by foreigners who are using American servers. That includes any of us who are using social media or even email in Australia, and that if there are people within the United States who are communicating with foreigners, that might be able to be investigated as well. At the moment, we know much less about PRISM than we do about the phone data mining, and certainly the eagerness of these major companies to deny that they're participating extensively in it shows that this is potentially a much more volatile issue, particularly since activists for online civil liberties have really been very annoyed at this administration, as well as the predecessor administration, for a very long time. But my guess is that this is not going to be reacted to very strongly by political opponents of President Obama, because they see this as an important part of the war on terror.
Yeah, so it's all done for that reason. All right, well, David Smith, we will leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.